So what we are doing today is we're going to try to deconstruct all this and find out where we can still find ourselves, where we can still find ourselves in existential terms. We're going to be looking at Joseph Campbell, Carl Jung, Nietzsche, and Schirmacher's works, as well as combining them in an overall look at everything. So the first thing to kind of think about is, who are we, or what are we exactly? Part of the great apes, part of higher cognition. Our physical attribute maybe is the only thing is the opposable thumbs, which we've used more for destructive purposes than anything constructive mostly in our lives. We've used this to dominate everything. If we'd like to arrogantly think that we dominate the world, we're very anthropomorphic. We think of the world through our eyes only, and we see everything through the way humans view the world. But in terms of everything from humanity, from the beginning of time till today, what hasn't changed? What have we been and still are till today? And the answer actually is, we're storytellers. Whether it's through art, through drawing, through oral literature, through conversation, through music, through philosophy, through conferences like this. We weave stories, we write tales, we create our own. This is our mythology. This is, as Joseph Campbell will put it, myth as metaphor. The most easiest and the most basic, the one that nearly everyone has, is our mythology of origin. A fancy way of telling you the way your parents tell you how you were born. Odds are most of us were born accidental, with either a ripped condom or nothing good on TV, or a blackout or a bit too much alcohol. The mythology, of course, that we write about this is something completely different, because the child doesn't feel special if you tell them we had too much to drink, so you're here thanks to vodka. We write a mythology which says, we prayed for you for weeks, you were a gift. All the other mythologies, from storks to angels to stars above to everything that's happened in history from beginning till now, we've written a mythology. Our nations, our countries, we have this mythology created to give our life a sense of purpose, a sense of meaning, to make us feel unique, to make us feel special. Even our nations themselves, actually especially our nations, invent somewhat ludicrous mythologies of where we come from, our origins, from gods, from volcanoes, from energies, from different things in the world. All of this combined to give us a reason. So to start this off as a little experiment, I'd like you to just take a pen and paper for 30 seconds right now, and immediately we'll give you 2 seconds to do that. Hopefully you all are. So just take a pen and paper and try to write for me an introduction to who you are. Introduce yourself. Don't think about it. Just write for 30 seconds. It's a bit odd watching just a blank screen with names, but okay. So wherever you are, just stop and let's try a little experiment. If you've written your age, that's not who you are. That's just a temporal state of time. If you've written your name, you had no choice in your name. It was given to you. If you've written your job, that is something you do, not who you are. If you've written where you live, that just happens to be a geographical coincidence for now. You will notice that the first things you tend to write are not who you are, because you haven't really thought about who you are. What you've written mostly is what your job is, what your occupation is, where you fit in the rat race, the mythology that has been constructed upon you rather than for you or by you. That being the biggest difference. So what I want to do today is take a delve into deconstructing ourselves and deconstructing the society that we live in, and then come up with how to come to where we are now. You might end up at the same place you are. You might end up re-accepting the same decisions that you've accepted, but there will be a big difference. Okay, so let's start with that. What would be the big difference? When you have chosen, consciously chosen, to be the person you are right now, then nothing that is happening right now should give you a sense of stress, regret, aggression, or a feeling of unhappiness or anxiety, because it is your choice. Most of this comes from the feeling of unwillingly being put in this place and not being given the choice to do this. This is the difference between willingly decide. For the sake of this discussion, let us put aside any religious, social constructs, or anything that you may believe in, and put them all aside just so we can actually just study them and look at them with a more critical eye briefly. What exactly are these things? What are these religious constructs or everything else that we're living in? You're basically playing, if you've played these games as a child, Monopoly and Risk. Your life is a combination of both put together. And it is absolutely absurd to think that one would take arms or weapons or nuclear weapons and fight an opponent playing Risk or Monopoly with them just because the dice rolled in a different way. It would be absurd to think that you would actually kill someone over a game of Monopoly or Risk. But what we do in everyday life is exactly that. It is a game we've invented. Nations don't exist. They're a creation that we've recently developed. Empires before that, kingdoms before that, going back to cavemen, tribes before that, familiar relationships, all of these are constructs. Constructs we've been put because it is a way to amuse. It is a way to keep us busy during our lives. It is not a bad thing. Going to Nietzsche, if you read the three metamorphoses out of Thus Spake Zarathustra, he says that we begin in the camel stage. And in the camel stage, we are the beast of burden. And this is your early life. This is education. This is where you get programmed. And he says this is a necessary part in life. And you are to learn as much as you can and carry as much of the weight and the burden of education, culture, society, norms, everything. Until one day, you reach so far that the last straw breaks the camel's back. And that's when you become the lion. And the rage of the lion is to destroy everything. And it is very important to understand this. It's not to destroy what we disagree with. It is to destroy even what we agree with and everything else. It is to destroy absolutely everything and return us to a state of nil, to return us to a state of nothingness. He says to defeat the dragon of thou shalt. Thou shalt being your parents, being society, being your significant other, being work, social pressure, everything in the world which has been put upon us in a way that forces us to live. We are, especially today, more than ever, we're brought up from a very early age. The minute you're in school, you have to do well in school to do well in high school. You have to excel in high school to get a scholarship to go to university. You have to get a scholarship in university to go to your higher studies. You get your higher studies so you can get a job. You get a job so you can have money, so you can have offspring, so you can create more rats for the rat race. And maybe you're allowed to think by the time you retire. Maybe by the time you hit 65 or 70, and in some domains, for instance, academia, we've canceled retirement age altogether, which means you run the rat race till you perish, literally run to your grave. So in this rat race, there's never been a pause or given a time where you're actually given a space to say, is this what I want to do? Is this who I am? Is this where we want to go? And this being exactly the issue. We don't want to give you that pause. We don't want to give you that moment of thought. We want you to run the race. Run the race perfectly, be part of the machine, run within it, do not question the structure, do not question the world. Today, even questioning the world has become part of the rat race. Even that has been commercialized, produced, whether in movies, in posters, in t-shirts, and people wear it. If you've watched the rants out of Fight Club, the rants out of Train Spotting, movies such as this, Crash, they all have these kind of beautiful, especially for instance, Irvin Welsh's Train Spotting, it has that "Why Choose Life?" It's been turned into house music, it's been turned into t-shirts, it's been turned into franchise logos. That's exactly the opposite of what it was meant to be. And this is the, as Zizek would call it, the end of thing, the end of times, where capitalism is actually consuming itself, self-consumptive, and we're just that force-fed customer that's actually consuming himself and paying the restaurant to eat himself over and over and over. And this is where we're stuck. So the lion in Nietzsche destroys everything. You destroy and wipe out everything that exists. And where are you left? You're left with nothing. As Descartes would have reached cogito ergo sum, the end of his thoughts in that, well, the end of what I would consider his logical thoughts in that, because then he takes a deep dive into religion to solve his issues, which is really sad. But until cogito ergo sum, it was a brilliant deconstructive nihilistic ending, which is your thought, your amalgamation of thought, your history of emotions, your sensory reflections from the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years of life. These thoughts, these emotions, this is who you are. And what you are is a constant state of flux and chaos and entropy. What you are changes the minute you, and I use this exercise usually when I give my class. I ask my students to write what you just wrote, but a full page. And then they are to rewrite it. And by the end of the semester, after writing it about 20 times, you realize that if you spend about an hour and write a page or two about who you are, by the time you finish the 2 pages, you would have become someone else. So when you reread it, you will have to re-edit it and change it. And every time you do, you will have to repeat that over and over and over again. You will constantly change, and every time you reflect upon who you are, you will change again and again and again and again. And this is what we're looking at. So the last stage in Nietzsche, he says the newborn babe, the child. And why that? Because the child invents lies and believes them and lives them. At the end of the day, reaching nihilism, reaching Descartes' and I think therefore I am, is not enough to exist, well, beyond a lot of alcohol and smoking at night and a deep philosophical conversation. When that wakes up, when you wake up the next day with a hangover, you still need to function. Voltaire would have said, plant your garden, go live your life, do the practical things. You still need to find a way. So you need to invent the new lies, the new world. You can choose to invent the structure that already exists. You can choose to accept the structure, the job, the place you are in, but you have chosen to accept it. You're no longer a drone bee. You're no longer being forced by the hive to move the way the hive wants. You've chosen to be part of the hive because, well, let's face it, we've got nothing better to do from here till we die. So we might as well invent something to actually occupy ourselves. We might as well, the more you read, and this is always something we teach in philosophy and in psychoanalysis, the more you delve into this, the more you study this, the less you know and more confused and perplexed you are. And it's what creates interesting works. And maybe when you read our articles or the books, it's why we sound so psychotic at times, because we borderline are. And the more you think about the human condition, the more you have to become like this, because that is the reality of sort of existing. That is the perplexity of where we are. The question, my favorite question in philosophy is, would you rather be a happy pig or a dissatisfied Socrates? And think about that for a second. Would you rather be a happy pig or a dissatisfied, anxious, intelligent person who thinks? Now, that question is actually problematic, because if you understand the question, then you don't have a choice. The happy pig never understood the question. That's why they're happy. Once you can understand the question, you've already taken the decision whether you like it or not. Whether you like it or not, existing means this anxiety of life and death and existence will have to be part of your life. You can choose to ignore it. You can choose to live your 20s and your 30s and dive into work and partying and not think about it for as long as possible. And you will then eventually hit that nice little midlife crisis and a series of other crises to follow. Or you can choose to have that crisis in your 20s and have that to follow. Sooner or later, that crisis will catch up with you. Humanity existing is a state of constant tension and anxiety, but that does not mean it is a state of unhappiness. Joseph Campbell talks about mythology and metaphor, and he talks about storytelling. And what I love in Campbell's writing, besides the fact that he is so interdisciplinary in the way he looks at things, is what he defines. He says there is no good and bad. We need to, as Nietzsche would say, go beyond this. This is a very juvenile definition of ethics and of society, of painting the world in black and white and making people think that you've done the right thing. What the right thing is, what the right thing to wear, what the right job is, what the right family structure to have has changed from the beginning of history till today and will continue to change. And will change not because of a decision you've taken, not because of a decision society has taken to improve human life, but will change because that is just consumptive culture. It will constantly change. Your road to bliss, as Campbell would say, is in figuring out your mythology. So Campbell talks about the journey of the hero's arc. And it's given an easy example is think of any action movie, any typical American Hollywood action movie, kind of a Bruce Willis Die Hard movies. Very dumb, very easy, very masculine, macho, retro kind of concept. But the male goes off to see the heroine, killing all the bad guys. Of course, let's erase the fact that he actually accidentally kills about 10,000 usually innocent people on the side in order to save the person he loves. He kills 10,000 other loved ones. Forget that. That's insignificant for now. But he goes on this external journey from the beginning, from his comfort zone, where he's called to action, called to work, called out of his comfort zone into the world of adventure. He goes on this journey and comes back, and the movie always ends at the same place it began. As did the Odyssey, as did the earliest work we have, which is the Epic of Gilgamesh. It starts at the walls of Babylon and ends right back there at the end, with him not having found eternal life, with him not have found anything. And the point of the journey, Campbell says, is not the external journey. The external journey is the aid for you to go on an internal journey, to actually find who you are. Because it is so difficult to sit down and think about it, it is easier to actually go out into the world and experience the world and go through these physical adventures, thinking that the physicality of the world will give us solutions, thinking that the physicality of the world will give us something where we will find answers. At the end of the day, every movie, every story has always ended with the same story. There is no answer out there. You're going to return to the same place. What has changed, though, is who you are. And not in the sense that you have found nirvana or internal bliss, but in the sense that you have been forced to think about who you are on this journey. Those moments of where your life has come into question, those moments where things that you used to think were given or have been taken away from you, where you think things have always stayed there and have disappeared now, these all have changed and been erased out of your life. And you've seen how temporal and temporary everything is in existence and how fragile your so-called social construct. We live in an age where we pride ourselves on security. And that is the biggest joke in the world. Life is insecurity. There is no security in life. And maybe today, the job market and with COVID and everything, this has more than ever come into kind of attention, which is everything that we had taken for granted as a safety net and a system has all crumbled around us and still is, and still will. That imaginary stability and security never existed in the first place. It's been our safety blanket. It's the same way our religions have existed from the beginning of time till now with all the different gods and all the different names. It's so much easier to have a beautiful fairy tale of life and death than to say, I don't know. To be an agnostic and just say, we're not sure at this point. But even those with the biggest faith have their doubts. So that anxiety is still there. The mythology that Joseph Campbell talks about is, he says that stories, myths, the way we speak, music, poetry, literature, they can express what really matters in life. I'm sorry, if you hear snoring, that's my puppy, not me. It's not my subconscious snoring. That's just our daughter Pug, and pugs are notorious for those sounds. And so these stories, they give us a structure to live in. The easiest thing would be to ask you to define love. And if you're going to try to define love, you're going to find out that after thinking, and stay away from the neuroscience biomedical definition, that's just going to bore me if you're going to talk about chemical transfers, but think of it on an existential or thought level. If you're going to define love, you're going to find out that sooner or later you're going to use the words, it's like this. It's like a sunset. It's like, I don't know, a beautiful poem or a beautiful view. It's like this warm feeling. It's like having the sun inside of you. Whatever romantic little statement you'd like to do, at the end of the day, it's a metaphor. See, a myth, mythology, religion, metaphors, all of these are not lies. The idiocy would be to take them as literal truth rather than understand what it was meant from behind them. And if you read religion, all religious texts with an eye at it not being a way to rule people or control people, but being an existential text of you understanding the myth and the metaphor behind it and figuring out how it applies to you, it's because the things that matter can't be defined in that sense. And it's been the eternal question. The reason we usually teach the Epic of Gilgamesh, and students hate it when we teach this at university, it's because the questions that were asked in 10,000 BC are still the same damn questions we're asking today. What's the point of being alive? What's after death? What means good life? How do I be happy? How do I live? And what we have as an answer is beautiful music, poetry, literature that helps soothe the soul and helps soothe you in the sense of feeling that you are part of what Jung would call this collective kind of unconscious, this tradition of dealing with this anxiety of being, of becoming, which is what we constantly are doing. And here, when we talk about it today more than ever, I think, especially with the internet, Jung's concepts of collective thought and collective unconscious and collective conscious become more and more prevalent and very visible to the person. But even when you look at our culture and our history, the questions of what it means to be alive, why am I alive? What am I going to do with my life? Has been the question that's from the beginning of time. And looping back to the beginning, a lot of people say that, so what if we watch 10,000 commercials a day, or I watch Friends, and I admit Friends is a guilty pleasure for me. Whenever I want to turn off my brains, it's one of those shows you put on. It's kind of Valium or codeine for your brain. It numbs you and puts you in a state of kind of sleep, mental sleep, so that you can deconstruct and de-stress. But what is the effect of watching things 10,000 times? So do me this little thing. I know I can't see your faces. I usually do this in class, so it's easier to tell. Close your eyes for 2 seconds, and let's see what the mental images can do. So close your eyes for 2 seconds. This is an old exercise we do. Try not to think of a pink elephant. There are no such things as pink elephants. There are no pink elephants in front of you. You do not see a pink elephant. Please do not think of a pink elephant. You thought of a pink elephant. You can open your eyes now, or unless you've all fell asleep, which in that case, just stay asleep. My voice will soothe you through the rest of it. The concept of the pink elephant, this abstract little construct, is our brains are hardwired to think in images and are hardwired to think in a way of repetition. So when commercials, when TV shows, when movies repeat the same mythology, the same kind of structure of how we should live, how we should be indirectly and directly, and it's repeated over 10,000 times a day, and you spend over 6 to 8 hours repeating it, it's like listening to an annoying commercial. First 2 times you listen to it, you're annoyed as hell. Then you start making fun of it. 2 weeks later, after you watch that commercial, you start repeating and humming the tune. And it stays with you. We are conditioning you. We are programming you now more than ever. We are programming you in ways that you don't control. So unless you take time every now and then to deconstruct everything that's been added upon you, you will very soon lose who you are. And it is something, an exercise that you need to do, especially in today's world of media, over and over again. And in coming back to the third metamorphosis of Nietzsche, in coming back to how we should be or how we should live our life, there are two that I find favorite for me. One would be Homo Generator for Wolfgang Schirmacher, and the constant becoming, the creation of one, and the beauty of the not only the acceptance but the kind of reveling even in your mistakes and in your flaws, because it is part of who you are, and it is part of that pleasure of becoming. And if you think of your memories, the few times you got things right, you barely remember. But everything you messed up through your life, all your biggest mistakes are your fondest memories and your funniest. After the pain of the embarrassment goes away, they do become a big part of who you've become, of that becoming, of that constant flux and rebirth. They form those kind of nexus, those stars. And the other way to look at decision making would be in Nietzsche's eternal recurrence. And he says, if there was a demon to make you relive that same decision over and over and over again every day, that decision you took, imagine you must live the rest of eternity retaking that same decision. Take your decision in a way that you would enjoy it in an eternal recurrence, in an eternal repetition. Take every decision not based on fear or marketing or some kind of capitalist construct or where you want to go with your job. Currently, one of my bosses just logged into the speech, so hopefully they won't take this the wrong way. So don't take your decision based on your bosses or on the way the world is structured, but take your decision based on the way that you would be happy retaking that decision, eternally recurring over and over again. That decision is something you will enjoy. It's kind of like the movie, if you watch it from the 80s, Groundhog Day, and he's reborn in the same day over and over again. I never understood why he complained. I actually loved the concept of being eternally reborn, to repeat the day and knowing the consequences and then playing out every alternative. It doesn't really sound very bad. It's a lot better than actually trying a new day every day and screwing up in a whole brand new way and not knowing what the repercussions of that until the day is ended and it's already too late to make up anything for that or change anything or take the other path. It's not Keats's choose the unwalked path. It's not go down the road that others have not gone down. That's not the idea. That's about, if you follow the unchosen path, if you follow the uncharted route because Currently, it's being advertised, especially on Instagram, as the way to be a wanderer and the way to live. You are about as much of a piece of the rat race as the person going to a 9 to 5 job in a suit that he hates. A wanderer who took the decision because it's popular, or a person who took a job because it's secure, is the same place. The idea behind choosing your bliss is knowing what the decisions are and, in a sense, not taking it too seriously. At the end of the day, in the next 2 minutes, hours, days, years, decades, you're going to cease to exist. And right before that moment, when you look back at things, you're going to see how ridiculously futile it is. And how many of us have existed before us, billions upon billions and billions and billions, more intelligent, less intelligent, more attractive, less attractive, achievements or not, buildings built, pyramids built, towers built in your name, mean not much. At the end of the day, you're playing board games. Don't take the game too seriously. Take it as a game. It becomes more fun. It becomes more of a thing you're doing because you are going to distract yourself, and you need to distract yourself because our kidneys and liver can only take so much alcohol and any other substance you can think of to amuse yourself in that time. There is a limit to it, which means in order to go on our next drinking binge, in between the two binges, we have to do something. And that something should be fun. For it to be fun is not a change of decision. It's understanding that the decision itself never really mattered. The decision itself was like choosing a color or choosing an icon when you're playing Monopoly. It was a decision you chose to play that game for that day, for that moment, for that hour. And simply put, since it's not laid in stone, and since there is no bigger definition of good and bad, and since nothing is actually really constructed and everything is flux and everything is in this constant state of chaos and entropy, then why are you stressing? There is this lovely little Buddhist who goes on chanting a little mantra, and he gives you this decision making things. And he says, why worry? And if you haven't seen it, it's absolutely brilliant. It's about a minute long. He does it a lot better than me, but I'm going to guide you through it. And he goes, either there is something that is bothering you or it's not bothering you. If it's not bothering you, then why worry? If it's bothering you, you have two choices. You can do something about it, or there's nothing you can do about it. If there's nothing you can do about it and it's bothering you, why worry? It's going to bother you anyway, and there's nothing you can do about it. If there's something you can do about it, why worry? Do something about it. And if you've done something about it, and at the end of the day it changed, then why worry? And if it didn't change, again, there's nothing you can do about it, so why worry? It's going to happen anyway. It's a lovely concept. And you can apply the same thing to the finitude of your life and to human existence. Why worry? Death is coming anyway. Sooner or later, it's going to happen. Never really worked with me. I mean, it sounds lovely, but when it comes to death, it still leaves me sometimes anxious at night and wanting for a drink or two or three to quiet the noises in your head. But the idea is real. Why are you taking it so seriously? Do you really think it matters that much? Yes, I've been a teacher for 20 years now. Lovely. I've had amazing connections with my students, and I absolutely love it and I adore it. And I love conferences like this. And you reach and you communicate, and it's a big joy in life. And it means absolutely nothing at the end of the day when you look at the bigger picture. At the end of the day, it is things we are doing. So the best we can do is amuse ourselves as much as possible and amuse each other and just exist in that state where we create our own mythology. And if we don't like it, change it. It is that simple. If you don't like the mythology that's present, change. I don't mean change the world. The world is broken, always has been, always will be. Leave it that way. It wasn't your problem to begin with, and it's not your place to set what others should think or what others should do. It is your issue. your mythology inside this all. You are to create you. So your only problem is if you're not happy, you're the issue.